Thank you so much, Navya. Thank you for the question. Thank you for having me on this series. I am a 2014-16 batch pass out from Cal. Before that, I am an engineer, but I was working as an engineer before that. 2012 is when I passed out from there. 2 years work ex prior to my MBA in a core engineering sector. So I was working with Alstom, which is a power plant and transport manufacturing company. So I was working as an R&D developer for their control systems. So extremely core engineering work before this R&D work, and then I moved obviously to AM Calcutta in 2014. I interned with HUL, with Unilever rather, in their South Africa business. Got a PPO, joined HUL directly out of campus, did not sit for my finals. So, second year was pretty chill for me. Worked in HUL for 2 years. First year is training, so worked across functions. My second year was sales. So, I was in sales for a little over a year. From there, I moved directly to P&G, where I joined as brand manager for Whisper. And I've been working with P&G and Whisper for the last over 3 years now. So that's been my journey so far. The other thing to add on top is I was also a part of the SEMS program on campus, which is obviously a great opportunity, which is only offered in AMCAL. Right? I'd taken it up. I was my international internship got covered through the summer internship which I had with Unilever anyway. I got a chance to actually sit for P&G's internship programs through the SEMS career forums as well in Europe. Not sure if that benefited me or not in the long term, but that's another part of my journey. Managing is not difficult as long as you have the right work experience, right? I'll talk about the different sort of roles which come on campus. Most of the companies which come on campus, I think barring P&G, offer what is a sales and marketing role, because the general philosophy in the FMCG sector especially is that you first do sales and then do marketing. So there can be different roles. One is, of course, a core sales role. And within sales as well, there can be general trade sales, or there can be modern retail or e-com sales. For example, somebody could be a key account manager for Amazon, or a key account manager for a Reliance or a Big Bazaar or Walmart. So those are very central sales roles, which are more, around category management, POSM, shelf space, etc. Not sales the way we think of it, in terms of just driving monthly numbers, right, and driving closures. That plays a bigger role in your general trade, which is mostly the roles which are offered out of campus. So within sales, there can be these two different sort of roles. There can be general trade, where you're handling distributors, etc. And there can be bigger account roles where you're actually handling national level accounts. Then the next role, which is almost an interim between sales and marketing, is a customer marketing role. It's called different things in different companies. It's called trade marketing, it's called customer marketing, it's called market strategy and planning in P&G. So different terms for this, but that is from a career standpoint also what normally the graph looks like, right? Again, P&G is an exception because it hires differently for sales and marketing, and the functions are quite split here. But in most other companies, you join into a sales role, you do 1 to 2 sales roles, you move into a trade marketing role after that, and then you move into marketing. A trade marketing role, as I was saying, is almost like an in between sales and marketing, where you're designing trade plans, you're designing launch support models. You're basically a liaison between what the marketing team is bringing into market and how it gets executed on ground from a distribution standpoint, a trade support standpoint, any launch activation you want to do, etc. So you tend to be the liaison there, and also very accountable for the numbers which the team has to deliver. Then within marketing also there are many different roles. Three, I think, specifically. One are marketing operations, where you could be handling different categories, but you're handling them at an operational level. There are, for example, P&G has trial activation roles, trial operation roles. You're handling trial chassis for different brands. Like Whisper has a very strong school program, so you could be handling the school program's execution across the country. Similar roles exist in other brands as well. There can be a e-com operations role. They're handling multiple brands, but for an e-com player. There could be media operations where you're handling media buying, etc., for a bigger player. There could be in stores. So those are operations roles. And then the core brand marketing roles within a category are split by the 7 P's or the 5 C's of marketing, whatever philosophy you adhere to. They're called different things in different companies, but normally one role tends to be more forward looking and focuses on designing the product, designing the packaging, and designing the communication. So that is where the proposition, or what you typically in campus think of as marketing, is coming to life, where you're trying to think of what your consumer wants from a product standpoint, what proposition appeals to her, what claims, what should your copy look like, what film should it be, you're designing that part of it. And then there's almost a brand delivery, a brand building role, as it's called in different companies, where you are designing the execution of these elements. You're deciding pricing, you're deciding all the media purchases, you're designing trial, and you're also responsible for month-on-month delivery of share, penetration, and all of those metrics for the business. So two very different roles. I think across companies they exist. But yeah, that covers everything. Sales can have category roles, general roles, then there's trade planning, and then within marketing, there can be operations, there can be the proposition, product, communication, design role, and then there can be these more delivery centered, more month-on-month delivery, business health centered roles as well. And normally a career path goes across all of these. In most companies, it starts from sales, moves to trade marketing, goes to the execution part of brand delivery, and then finally moves to the last one, which is where you actually make the communication, the product, the packaging, that part. So it tends to move in. In P&G, for example, a brand hire is recruited into a brand directly, but you would mostly be recruited in the operations or execution side of brands, and then go into the what here is called design, or what in other companies is called brand development, right? Where you actually talk about design, your communication, packaging, all of those elements. So you take some experience of execution and then move on to those roles. That normally tends to be the case. In a lot of other companies, you actually have to do everything. You start with sales, you move to trade marketing, and then you move into different brand assignments. So brand roles, core marketing roles come last in most of the FMCG, or I think even other sector companies, consumer good companies.
Okay. That's very insightful. I really definitely didn't know of that. And moving on, this brings us to the next
finally, question. Actually, so these are all still mid-management level roles. And then finally, what the role could look like is either you are a category leader. So, for example, you could be leading a brand or an entire category like a fabric or, health drinks or something of that sort for the entire country or for a region. That normally tends to be where a marketing role ends up. Or you could get into very core functions as well. You could get into communication designing. You could get into very core brand, very niche roles. But if you don't, then mostly you end up being in a very general management sort of a position where the entire multifunction team is accountable for you, and you're the business leader for a category or a brand at a national, regional, global level.
Okay.
Most important thing any company looks for when they're coming on campus is just your sort of ability to think on the spot and construct your thoughts logically, come to a conclusion. So it's your mental processing of information that they're looking for, more than how much you've been able to, cram terms, etc. Right? So those sort of things they know you can learn. But really, it's your thinking process which the company is trying to understand, because that is not something that requires a lot of practice to correct, right? So if I'm talking to you, that's why so many random problems, case studies, etc. are also given. Maybe the result you drew from the case study is absolutely incorrect. It may actually be something which has happened in the past, and the answer you gave is wrong. It's been proven to be wrong, or you have a very different point of view from the person who's asking the question. What is important is your ability to deconstruct the problem, frame it properly in a logical way, and then give your answer and explain the thought process behind how you arrived at the answer, and then your ability to defend that answer. I'm not saying, even if you've been proven wrong, stick to it, but at least give logical reasons supporting why you've come to a certain conclusion. Especially in marketing, it will always be subjective. There's going to be no formula which will tell you the right strategy which would have driven for something. It is your reasoning which the recruiter is trying to understand. And then obviously your gut, I think, also comes through, especially in a marketing role, right? whether you're able to understand consumer problems, whether you're able to understand, some level of empathy slash passion to understand a consumer insights needs to be there in the marketeer. So if you are extremely either complete a mix of data and qualitative assessment, both are needed. And I think those are the two things they are always checking. One tip, as in I think for the entire group, don't let your GD become what is called a Hindi bazaar or a fish market, right? Because then the entire GD gets shelved. That is the worst thing that you can do. Because if the recruiters want to see a lot of groups, they know, and they're going to meet, should I say thousands? Yes, they're going to meet thousands of applicants across all the campuses they're going to. They really don't mind probably shelving one GD of 8 people. The chances that they were going to find a diamond amongst those 8 people, according to them, might not be that high, right? So for them to quickly say that, hey, I got nothing out of this GD, I'm going to pick one person who stayed quiet, or I'm not going to pick anybody at all, is easy. But for you, it could be a very big loss. And for somebody else in the group who really cared about that company, it could be a big loss. So I think as a campus, we need to do that better, that we make sure our GDs do not go off track. They're very structured, and people get the ability to speak. What has worked well for GDs for me, and thankfully I've been able to do a good job with them, is don't try to oversell yourself. I mean, the number of times you talk in a GD is really not important. If you've spoken, ideally, I would say, and sorry, these are just my tips, right? They might not be correct. But if you've spoken even 2 times to 3 times, that is enough, as long as you've made a solid point. Even if you've spoken once, but you've said something which was noticed by the recruiter, you will make the cut, right? What needs to happen is, don't repeat something just because somebody said it. If you can't think of any, if you give a differing point of view and you give a solid reason behind that differing point of view, you will get noticed for sure. But it just shouldn't be, I don't agree with you, and then that's it. Like, why don't you agree with that person? That needs to come across. They're looking for reasoning. They're looking for why you're saying certain things. They're looking for a point of view. If you don't have anything to do, then just pick up what other people have said and form your point of view based on that. Be very articulate. Say, I agree with this person, because I think these 2-3 arguments which have been made in favor of the motion make sense, and I agree with them. So you could actually be adding no more value, but you could be helping structure it. And what you could be showing to the recruiter is that you have the ability to pick up information and drive a conclusion from it. Because maybe the other people just gave one random point, but you were able to synthesize those 2 points and say, okay, this makes sense, and hence I'm drawing a conclusion out of it. So maybe you don't know enough about the topic, but you can just pick up things which others have said and still show your structuring power. So one, don't make it a chaos. Secondly, don't try to speak unless you have something to say. If you're able to not think of anything to add to the conversation, listen very carefully to what others have said. After 5 minutes of the GD have passed, you will definitely, if you're applying your mind to it, be able to find some connection, some structure from what others have said and offer a point of view. And for all you know, that point of view might actually help lead the GD in the right direction. And then obviously, if you can't do anything, be a timekeeper. Like that's the, I don't know how much success that will have, but that is always like just something to add, right? Maybe everybody else in the GD is so bad that you get extra points just for being there to try and bring order to the conversation, right? So if you can't do anything, then do that. But otherwise, just try and synthesize, try to move the conversation forward. Try to say, hey guys, it's just 30 seconds left. I think this is everything. If you've made notes through the GD, you could just be that person right at the end when people have run out of things to say. To say, guys, it's 30 seconds left. These are some of the great arguments which we've made in the GD. They could be repetition of what others have said. And I think we have some solid cases in support of the motion or against the motion. In the end, the recruiter will probably remember you because you structured it well. I think 2 things shine out to me. One, of course, is we somehow always feel like we will work in marketing. Like, I'm sitting for marketing companies, would be marketing. Getting into a marketing role, even after you've gotten into a sales and marketing company, takes its own time. And it tends to get quite frustrating because and it shouldn't be, because it's just the way our expectations have been set. I think that makes a difference, right? A sales role also adds a lot of value. But it's just that in our minds, we're just prepared that I'm going to sit in a marketing company, I'm going to become a brand manager, I'm going to become a marketer, I'm going to start making copies from day one. That doesn't happen. Like, with the exception of very few companies, that doesn't happen. So I think a better understanding what people sitting for both summers and especially for finance should do is talk to people who've been in the industry. And obviously, sessions like these can help, right? To get a better sense of what an actual day or actual work cycle is like. In an average company, would take anywhere between 3 years to 5, 7 years. Okay, maybe not 7, but 5 years for sure to get into a core marketing role. And there are things which you learn which add value to it. So that is one for me. The second part of it is we look when we, and that is a little funny, but when we are thinking of marketing, we are thinking of, oh, I'm going to be designing the packaging and I'm going to be designing a new product and a proposition and I'll make this entire copy. Somehow in our minds, it looks like copy is a film or a TV ad. We feel like everything is going to be done by me, but there are so many people involved. For product, you'll be working with an R&D team, you'll be working with teams within the company who are really good at driving researches, getting insights. You will be working with a creative agency, with a media part buying agency. So at the end of the day, your role is a bit like a project manager, where there's a lot of stuff happening and you are adding value, of course, but you're also just trying to make sure everything is happening at the right time. You are not the one who's going to be sitting and writing scripts or anything. All you will be doing is reviewing those scripts when somebody presents it to you and offer your point of view. You'll be reviewing a design which somebody else has made. So creativity is, I think, overrated in our minds when we enter, where we feel like this is a very creative field. Creativity, you pay others to bring creativity. You are there to sort of make sure it's meeting your brand goals and whatever you've aligned. So that was the second thing which I felt wasn't true after I started working in the field.
Okay.
Personally, I have very little experience with case competitions. I think after my PPO, I got extremely relaxed and focused on my SEMS journey, etc. But I do feel in hindsight that they could have been helpful. And the good thing was I was into marketing since my engineering way, so I taken it up then as well. So I saw the merit in case competitions. I think one, of course, they are a great way to get a PPI or a PPO with companies. So don't let the opportunity go. You never know what's going to happen in finals, right? Your dream companies come, don't come. They have a position, don't have a position. You don't know. So you shouldn't let go of these opportunities. Even if they don't end up in PPIs, PPOs, they will help you build connections with the company, right, with the HR or even with anybody else in the company. And they just know that they have you in their minds, in their records somewhere. And if you've obviously done a good job, if you're able to qualify, etc. So that is one benefit, which is very like job centric. And it helps add a lot of skill for sure. So I think there's absolutely zero downsides to doing a case competition. It prepares you for your, not just for for your final job placement. It also prepares you for when you actually start working in the sector, because essentially it's problem solving, right? They've given you problems which are real problems which we solve every single day. Every single day we have problems like, and obviously bigger brands don't have such niche problems, but my problem could totally be that this is the consumer set. This is the gap which is there over there. What should I launch? What should the financial model be? What should the media model for it be? How should I reach my consumers? These are day in and day out problems which a marketer would solve. Of course, we would have a big team working on it. Here is just you. But I think it adds a lot of value. And again, here, similar to the interview, what will be looked at is your ability to structure it properly. Your solution does not have to be something which the person judging you agrees with. The structure needs to be correct. Your thinking needs to come through in it. The process you followed needs to be correct, whether you looked at the right data set or not. And it needs to be very close to the consumer problem. I think that is the most important element that should shine out of your case competition, that you were able to understand the real consumer issue and whatever you've designed is solving that consumer issue. So as long as those two things are happening, I think it will work, and those are the two things you should focus on. I was very passionate about working for marketing, as I said, right from my engineering when I did some marketing courses. And why this happened was because I wanted to work with consumers. I wanted to try and understand what people are thinking. Why are they buying something? What can I do to, sort of influence their decision as well? I think that part is the highlight for me every single day. We have so many consumer connects, so much time and effort is spent to try and uncover what my consumer's thinking, what is her problem, how can I address it, what is she taking away from what I'm saying to her, and what exactly should I say to her, what should I design for her. So everything is very human at the end of the day. You're designing for human beings and you're super close to their responses. So that's absolutely still the highlight for me. I can't think of a big low light, to be honest. I think initially the disappointment for me was just what I was saying earlier, right? That there's so many stakeholders involved, that a part of it is very project management like, because of course there are things which you are contributing to individually, but a lot of the time is also just going to manage everything, because you're sort of as the market, as the brand manager, sort of the leader, not the leader, but the one who's accountable to make sure everything's working. So that was one part which initially I felt a little disappointed by. And of course, I think a disappointment for every single person who enters sales and marketing is that they have to do sales. So that was a disappointment for me. But in retrospect, I feel like it did add a lot of value. So I wouldn't change it. But yeah, both of these things were short-term disappointments, but I'm sure like a lot of people would face them. I would just say, make sure you're very passionate about uncovering, what we call human truths, human problems, and you also have an analytical bent of mind. If you have both of these, I think you can have a great career in marketing. And make sure you're not following a fad. This, of course, holds true for marketing, finance, consult, whatever it is that you might be passionate about. Make sure you're not going towards it just because it's the trendy thing to do. For all you know, you could be a fit for a completely different sector and really shine in it. So make sure you really understand what goes into being successful in those companies, in that sector. Talk to as many people as possible. And for PGP ones, you have PGP2 who've interned here. Please leverage that experience. PGP2s, please reach out to alumni and try and understand what their experience is like, and then make the decision for yourself. Don't. So many people in their finals get told you're not a fit for this sector or this company, and I feel like it's true, because sometimes your personality, your strengths don't really match the sector you're going towards, and you will struggle afterwards. So it's best to understand what is the best fit for you. Maybe you're super analytical. You really want to be very focused on information and data mining, etc. Go into that sector. It might not be the trendy thing to do on campus, but that's what's right for you. You can be really good at it. You might have an operational or a product supply bent of mind. Please go there, or an IT bent of mind. You can be super successful in those spheres. Don't enter a segment just because it's whatever is the trendy thing to do, right? I took that decision with finance very early on. I had very little aptitude for it, continue to have very little aptitude for it. Decided to not pursue any finance role, and I think it was a great decision. I may have ended up in a company for sure on day zero, but I know I couldn't have done well at it. So make sure you don't decide something just because others are telling you that it's the fancy thing.
Hello, I'm Himani, and I was born and brought up in Delhi. I did my schooling from Victoria Girls Senior Secondary School, and due to my dedication towards physics, I decided to go for physics majors from Miranda House, University of Delhi. After a long tussle, I decided to complete my long-awaited desire to learn a new language, and hence did Spanish for a year. After which, I got admitted to IIM Calcutta. After entering to IIM Calcutta, I just knew that I have a knack for marketing, and that's where I started to prepare for marketing. And I landed up as an intern, a brand management intern in P&G. So that's my journey so far. So after I realized that my skill set aligns most with marketing, and I had an inclination towards learning brands and consumer behavior, I decided to start with the basic concepts, with the theoretical concepts that were given in Kotler. So we had a subject that goes by the name of Marketing Management 1 in term 1, wherein I learned all the jargons from Kotler. And there were cases when I did not understand the concepts right from the book. So what I used to do was first to learn the definition, and by learn I mean understand the concept from the book, and then finally go through a lot of examples so that I remember each and every concept very clearly. So the more concepts you go through, clearer your thought process becomes. After I went through all the jargons and all the theoretical concepts from the book, I started doing GTM strategy cases from various sources. And in the beginning, I started doing the GTM cases that were given on the internet. So I would just take up any very known famous brand, and I would start with their SCP analysis and finally go with their marketing mix. And let's say after 10 to 15 GTMs of very common brands, I understood the structure. I understood what my shortcomings were. And after that, I decided to go for hypothetical situations. So I asked help from my seniors. They would give me any random product, any kind of GTM strategy that ranged from product launch to pricing a new product or market re-entry. And I did almost 15 cases of all the GTMs. And after that, I was really structured in the way I approached marketing problems. After all this, I started going through infographic reports of Euromonitor. I understand that it's a bit difficult to learn about all the industries. So I picked up 10 to 15 most common industries. And after that, I used to go through the reports once. I would just have a cursory look through all the reports that I know who the market leaders were, how was the industry overall, was it fragmented or consolidated, and Porter's five forces. And after going through all of these, I had a good performance in my GDs. That was another thing. And apart from that, I did my questions, a personal questionnaire very well. So we were given let's say we were given 36 questions from our college itself. I used to write them, refine them, and practice them over a period of time so that when I speak, the structure and my thought process is very clear. The point of doing this exercise was not to cram the answers, but to make sure that whenever I speak, I'm structured in the way I think, in the way I accumulate my voice. So all of that helps a lot. And finally, I used to go through Instagram pages of a lot of brands, which really inspired me personally as well. So that was not really a prep exercise. It was something that I used to enjoy doing, and it really helped me because there are a lot of questions that revolve around your sector. Let's say what that just helps you define the answer, such as why do you want to go in this particular sector? Was there anything that inspired you particularly? Was there any brand campaign that you really liked, or anything related to marketing? So instead of going through newspapers and all, I used to go through Instagram posts and I would read blogs in my free time. And finally, I would give a lot of mocks to my seniors that helped me define or redefine or refine my performance in my personal interviews. And finally, I think my passion and my dedication for marketing is something that drove my performance in the final interviews. That's all. Well, that's a very subjective question, but to answer you broadly, from my experience, based on my personal experience in sitting interviews, I have seen that creativity, passion, leadership skills, and team spirit. These are four very common things that I found amongst most of the selected or shortlisted candidates, and it is generally reflected in their resume as well. Apart from that, some companies generally look for a candidate who fits into their culture, and they do so by conducting small simulation games or psychometric tests. So there's no particular fixed or some defined parameters that they look for, but these were some categories that I found. And these are something that you can show while writing your answers or while giving psychometric tests or while giving your answers in the PI as well. So these were some things that I found. Some things that every candidate who will be sitting for their summer placements or any placement at all should do are like starting from understanding what what the role is. So I have seen a lot of people applying for the roles just by the name, and sometimes the job description is very different from the job title. So the first step is to make sure that you really want to go in this specific role, because that gives you a lot of clarity and a lot of structure in your answers while you are giving your interview. Second thing is, while you're preparing, do not miss out on anything at all. For example, I've seen people being a bit complacent when it comes to theoretical concepts, and they start jumping towards the examples. Unless your concepts are not clear, do not jump to examples, do not jump to cases, because that is something that comes up or that reflects when you actually speak your answers. So go through your concepts first and then finally go to examples. And one more thing that I've seen is just be updated. No matter which interview, which sector you are sitting for, you should be updated with what is happening around the world, because that gives you a lot of exposure to a lot of content that you can speak, especially in GDs and your PIs. So there are some questions that they ask directly from the most updated news or anything which is very common in, like, which is very trendy or which is in news. So these are some things that every candidate should do. Apart from that, specifically for sales and marketing, my recommendation would be, after you are done with your theoretical concept and everything, try to go through a lot of ads, because that helps. When you go through a lot of ads, that could be from 1990s till the very recent ad, as recent as yesterday. When you go through these ads, you get to know a lot about brands, about what they are doing, what is happening around the world, and that gives you a lot of content to speak about in your interview. It also shows that you're passionate about what you are speaking. And finally, to every candidate who will be watching this video, my suggestion is to go through your resume 10 times at least. You should know each and every word. You should be very honest with what you're speaking, what you're writing on your resume. And I think that is all. So honestly, I came like when I entered IIM Calcutta, I was very open to all the options, to all the sectors, and I used to prepare. Initially, I used to prepare for all the sectors. But when I realized that I am more inclined towards marketing, and I liked what they taught there, that is exactly when I started talking to a lot of seniors, a lot of people who are already there, who have been, who had been there in the industry, in the domain of sales and marketing. So I started my journey with a very clear picture, with a very realistic picture of a lot of companies, and especially the firms that I was targeting. So I did not have a lot of myths in my head. I was very clear, and when I actually interned in P&G, the picture was very similar to what I had imagined. But I have seen a lot of my friends having a lot of myths, and I really don't know where do they come from. But some myths that I would like to, burst right now would be, the first one is that you need to be a fresher to go or to get shortlisted for a sales and marketing role, which is not true. I've seen a lot of people with work ex and not work ex in sales and marketing, in diverse fields. Even they are, right now they're working in sales and marketing. The next myth that I have I have heard a lot is that your resume should be bottom heavy. By bottom heavy, I mean it should have a lot of extracurricular activities written there and a lot of position of responsibilities, which is not true. A lot of us try to balance our CV, and I think what a recruiter really looks for is not the length of your or the depth of your bucket, but the quality of work that you have done. That is what stands out for most of the recruiters. So balance CV is another thing. And finally, that a lot of people say that they're not creative enough to go for sales and marketing. Trust me, everybody is. And even if you have a good structure to whatever you do, you are good to go for sales and marketing. So these are very common myths that I had heard, and so that answers your question. Yeah. So I'll tell you what my expectations were, and then probably I would move to the kind of work that I did. Yeah. Starting from understanding consumer to finally giving your recommendations based on the product is something that I had imagined while going into marketing, and that is something that I was fortunate enough to get in my internship as well. When you're going for a role of sales and marketing, what you should be prepared for and what is generally given to all the interns is uh, a project that would require you to go to in depth um, to the depths of the topic that you're given. Let's say you're given a product launch in your internship, then the role would require you to first do a very thorough secondary research from all the sources that you can get. It also requires you to put all your brains to the problem that is given to you, and finally to understand the consumer, and after understanding the consumer, try to figure out the insights from whatever the data you're getting, and out of that entire data you should be able to make out meaningful recommendations for the project. So that is something that happens in all the internships. My internship, the project that I got in my internship was GTM strategy, and it was very different. And it was very different from the theoretical or the classroom cases that we do, in the sense that it is very extensive. So let's say in probably a case that you're solving in your classroom would require you to analyze the data of 100, let's say 100, 1500 or so consumers. But in real life, you're handling data in millions or in fact billions as well. And there are a lot of biases that are present when you talk to consumers. So when you're actually handling data on a much larger scale, the very common mistake that people end up doing is to get lost in that data, which is very natural to happen. But then again, looking at your objective, you should be able to look at the bigger picture and not get lost in the data. And some things that help you in your internship or specifically in this domain are the things that such as what keeps you updated. Let's say I'm looking at a lot of brand campaigns that are happening around the world, that somehow gives you idea, that somehow invokes that creativity, that creative aspect in your idea formation. And obviously you need to think out of the box when you are given a problem, because every problem is very unique, and generally the problems that are given to you are specifically for you. Nobody else is working on that. So you have the liberty to be as extensive and as creative as you want to be. And apart from that, one thing that I really, really like about marketing is that you get to interact with a lot of people, and not just consumers. By a lot of people, I mean people across countries, and you understand what are the different ways in which people react based on their geographical location, based on their culture. And that somehow makes your experience very rich when you're proposing your final recommendations for any given product, for any given problem statement. So that is something that I have seen common in a lot of sales program. And any experience out of real corporate or real firm that you work in is a look at the industry. So when you actually go to your secondary research and when you go to the market with a lot of biases, you understand that in order to learn something, first of all, you need to unlearn your own biases. And when you remove all those biases, you come up with a very beautiful, very unique picture of the problem statement that was given to you. So that was all I can talk about marketing in general. Should I wait for shortlist? A big no. You should never wait for the shortlist, because a shortlist could come as late as probably one day prior to your interview. And at that time, you won't have time to go through a lot because you have a lot to cover. So in no way you should be worrying about your shortlist right now, or in fact, at any point of time. you should be thorough with your prep, focus on your prep, and probably most importantly, try to enjoy the prep, because it'll add value to your profile, it'll add value to your skill set. And that should be your motto while you're preparing. And apart from that, what shortlist do you get? What do you get? That is not in your hands in the first place, right? So you should focus solely on your prep and not on the shortlist that you're getting. Well, honestly, and this is my personal observation, you should prepare your personals no matter which sector you are preparing for. Even if you're sitting for consult, even if you're sitting for any XYZ sector, you should be thorough with your personals, because let's say you're sitting for any role in any domain, but what if the company is actually wanting to understand your culture fit? At that point of time, what matters the most is how you structure your answers, how well you are prepared with your personal questionnaire. And one thing that my personal recommendation is to everybody who's watching this video is that your personal questionnaire, and specifically the questions that define you, should be very well prepared, because that shows that you know yourself, that you have thought through your profile, your entire life before coming for this interview, which is a very good image in front of any recruiter. So my recommendation would be to go through your personals, revise them, try to practice them a lot, probably many times before you actually sit for the interview. And I'm saying not just because you know what questions will be asked, because there'll always be a question in your interview which is new, which is something that you probably did not prepare for. In such situations, what helps you the most is the practice that you have done for your answers. And when you probably, let's say, when you cross that 10 question mark, that means when you are done with your 10 answers over and over again, you develop a structure, you develop a thought process. So even if a new question is shot at you, you take it very well.